Do you still love me or not?
I need something outside.
Hi, welcome to Frankly K. This is my financial literacy segment. Welcome to the channel if you're new. Welcome back if you're not new. Glad to see you again. I'm really happy you came back. This is a channel where we do basically a lot of random stuff. That's why it's called the Midnight Pulp Party. So if you want to become a member of that, go ahead and click subscribe and like the video so that it keeps reminding you to come back. Here I do journal with me's, book reviews, vlogs, and financial literacy videos for everyday finance kind of things. So if you like the idea of that and you want a chill place to just kind of vibe out with the stuff, I do post all my videos at around midnight, at or around, like around about. I used to post them in the middle of the day, and that is fine, but you know, I think I'm a very conceptual person, and so now I can't get it out of my head that I feel like I need to post my videos at midnight. So today I have my notes down here, so you're gonna see me maybe glance. But anyway, today I wanted to bring to attention the thing that was brought to my attention. Basically just try to clear-cut explain quantitative tightening and quantitative easing, because we just came out of a quantitative tightening. They announced it all over the place, and I saw a lot of things that basically I felt like convoluted it a little more. So I'm hoping that I can bring some more clarity. I'm gonna read you the description of the description that I wrote, because it's the best one, most succinct. So both are monetary policies that encompass a bunch of active strategies employed by the Federal Reserve to steer the economy into the desired trajectory. The aim is not to overcorrect, but to jumpstart the facilitation of balance. That was my definition. So what I'm saying is that quantitative easing and quantitative tightening are components of policy, and it's a policy that is supposed to help the economy either cool down or beef up. So that's that. Quantitative tightening is more in relation to when they're trying to cool down the economy from an inflation, and then quantitative easing is from when they want to beef up an economy, trying to pick it up out of a possible recession. So back in November, you might have heard the news that they are now stopping or easing out of the quantitative tightening program. We're going to just say QT from now. So they're getting out of the QT policy, I should say, or program, you could say, for now. Quantitative tightening is not the Fed's taking money out of the economy. That's not, I've seen that as the description, but I think that is not the best description. It's not the most encompassing or accurate description, in my opinion. Instead of saying that QT is taking money out of the economy, what it's really doing is it's trying to flatten a spike, so to speak. I don't want to say those words because those are terms that people use for other things. So I'm wary about using it that way, but it is the best imagery I could give you. So we all know what an inflation is. Inflation is when prices are going out of control. Supply is basically using leverage on the high demand of whatever it is. It usually starts with housing and then kind of goes around to every little thing. But housing is the big indicator of inflation or recession. It is a big indicator in that. It is just one aspect of inflation. The pricing is another aspect. All these aspects come together and form the whole economy. There's other things in the economy, right? With QT, the whole aspect of tightening is when the feds are trying to basically tighten their belt. And in tightening their belt, they are going to make sure that they have the least amount of cash that they have to have in their balance sheet. And the balance sheet is basically just a listing of infrastructure, an institution or a person, because you have a balance sheet as well, of your assets, liabilities. You know, they're trying to minimize that balance sheet to the point where it's enough for in case something happens, but they don't have so much, they don't have as much cash out there. Okay, like, and by out there, I mean their balance sheets usually include things like treasury bonds and mortgage-backed securities. Mortgage-backed securities, from my understanding, are basically when they buy the loans from the banks or whatever companies giving out these mortgage loans. They are the ones lending the money or helping supply part of the money. They're investing in the money. They make money on the interest. Mortgage-backed securities. They're securities backed by companies that specialize in mortgages. Okay, that's, I think, the basic of that. And so that's why it also affects housing. So that's where that ties in. And then treasury bonds. We've talked about bonds here briefly in the last video. So that's the feds. They lessen that by basically letting whatever contracts they have, whatever bonds or mortgage-backed securities that they have, lapse, so they don't reinvest into the cycle. All right, that is the idea of where it comes from, where they're taking money out of the system because they're not reinvesting what they've already had in the past. They're just putting it on ice, so to speak. They're removing the amount of available cash that will be circulating in the economy. When it comes to interest rate, that's affected because when it comes to the bonds, like treasury bonds and everything like that, when they have less long-term bonds, it actually drives demand down. So when demand goes down, for some reason, the interest rate on the savings goes up. So that's why in many, many videos ago, I said that even though Feds will be cutting rates, you'll see certain things go up. Like mostly your savings rates are also going to go down. Like if at a bank or something like that, your savings rate, if they cut rates, your rates also go down with that. But sometimes if you have bonds, those rates will go up. They have an inverse reaction. So, but anyway, those rates, they're separate from, say, your loan rates. They're not the same thing. So savings and loan, they always say savings and loan, but like they are actually two separate reactions, especially because the type of savings matters. If it's a bank account, it's more in tandem with what the Fed's rate cuts are doing interest rate wise. But if it's bonds and stuff, for some reason, the yields go up. Like the interest rate yields go up. When the Feds cut their balance sheet down and they're getting rid of a lot of, or they're not reinvesting, so that they can slow the economy down during inflation. Part of that is realizing the effect on purpose that they're having with these mortgage-backed securities and these treasury bonds and whatnot, long-term bonds. They're not always treasury bonds, but like that's one of them. Like, so they just have other long-term bonds, and that the less investment that's happening, the more it tightens the belt around the economy is the best imagery I can give you. The interest rates kind of rise in a sense because there's more restricted lending, and that restriction comes with higher interest rates. So for instance, if you have a higher interest rate on anything, especially during a time of inflation, that's what's happening. It just keeps like ballooning. Like pricing of things keep ballooning. But if you also balloon interest rates, a lot of businesses, this is part of what I've mentioned before in, I think, the very last video or the video before that. But interest rates will go up, and businesses themselves, we're talking about people taking millions of dollars in loans. So imagine the interest on those loans. That's something they're going to cut back on how much spending is going to happen business-wise. And that spending includes infrastructure. It includes retail spaces. It includes employees. We've discussed all this before, I believe. If I haven't, please let me know. But I believe I've talked about this already. So blah, blah, blah. All of that happens, and that's what starts to kind of compress, kind of suppress the growth that's kind of inflating out of control, right? Think about it like a balloon. They're trying to get it before the bubble pops, before the balloon pops. They're trying to let some air out of that balloon, and letting that air out means like basically releasing some of the investment that they have in the economy. so that it can kind of trickle down and naturally manipulate. So it's kind of oxymoronic to say naturally manipulate, but it is a manipulation tactic so that they can help guide things naturally. Because naturally also consumers aren't going to spend as much when the prices are skyrocketing and interest rates, they're not taking out loans because interest rates are up the wazoo. Because of that, it starts to lessen supply, or demand, I should say. Demand naturally goes down, and supply cannot use demand as the bartering chip for prices to be what they usually are when demand is sky high and everybody's like, I can price this however, I can price this to the moon because everybody wants it. So when demand lessens, supply also lessens their bargaining power, and that's what starts to quell the prices. That's another part of what they try to do with QT, is try to get price control back together. Let me check my notes and see if I got everything. I'll probably just put verbatim what I wrote in the bio in case I missed anything. But yeah, so that, again, another real quick video. But QE, with QE is the opposite, right? Quantitative easing is what I said in the beginning, what happens more so when there is a pending depression or recession, right? Like the interest rates are like kind of rock bottom, but they're like a little too low. They're so low because nobody, you know what I mean? They're trying to get people in the door, basically. That's another reason why sometimes the people will cut rates so that they can get people in the door. That's what they do. It's kind of, to me, I've always found it kind of funny because it's just like a constantly swinging pendulum. Because this is when rates are really, really low, and it's simply because there isn't any spending or buying power, to my understanding, you know. But it also is when people, they don't have the money. They don't have the money. So it doesn't matter if the rates are rock bottom. Nobody has the money. Nobody wants to take the risk of spending, and businesses don't want to take the risk of lending because nobody has the money, nobody has a job, nobody's getting hired. And also, when people do get a little bit of money, that's when they take advantage of those low rates as a normal person would, or a normal business would, and things start to swing back over into the other way, and it has a danger of becoming inflation again. But for the most part, quantitative easing is supposed to be something that is helping during a depression, because they're trying to, the feds will go and buy up more stuff, basically putting an injection into the economy. Like, they're trying to beef it up, like I said earlier. And so they'll go and they'll buy those, you know, they'll reinvest in long-term bonds and mortgage-backed securities and treasury bonds and all this other stuff, so that they can kind of pump the economy with a little bit of money. That bolsters the businesses, who it trickles down to being able to hire again, being able to build out again, so that more people can have employment and more people will be able to circulate money because they have employment, and they themselves will probably invest more because they have the money to do so. So that's the whole point of quantitative easing. Because I explained quantitative tightening, basically just flip it. Quantitative easing, that's the baseline of what those two things are. So I hope that helped. I hope that was a lot more explanatory, because I feel like every time I used to like do the research on these things, especially when I was in school, the hardest part to understand was what exactly was the effect of the feds doing all that on the economy. Like, everyone said that's what they were doing, but I was like, where is the link? So I linked it together with basically common sense, like of my own common sense after learning what I've learned. And it was just because of the type of investments they have. That's the trickle down effect. And that's why I kept bringing up mortgage-backed securities and long-term bonds, because those things directly affect the economy. They directly affect the housing market, which is like I said earlier, big indicator of whether we're in a recession or an inflation. Yeah, that's all for today. Thanks for watching. I hope this explained everything. Or not everything, but I hope this explained it a little more. I hope you have a little more understanding about what's happening and what they were talking about. So the fact that let me wrap that up, right? the fact that they said they're easing out of that program back in November basically was saying that they're gonna, possibly start working on maintaining the balance. This doesn't automatically mean that we're like out of the inflation period or whatever. They're just saying that it's gotten to a point now where they see stabilization on the horizon, so they're going to ease up on their non-reinvestments, and they'll probably start reinvesting little by little because they don't want to essentially tank the economy by not investing in it at all. So they're trying to right now create a balance, so they're coming out of that policy work. Okay, so that's the other part of QT and QE. There is a middle ground where they try to maintain a balance. They usually don't employ those things until it gets, like, you ever been on the pirate ship at like Six Flags? if you're in the States, we have this, I think a lot of places have it. It's that one that just, it rocks like that. They try not to employ these policies until the boat is, you know what I'm saying? It's like on either side. If it's like here, right, they're gonna just see what happens. They might cut rates here, do a little tweak here and there. But these policies are for when the boat is, when the boats are rocking. I hope that maybe lessen some worries, because people were kind of really attacking people with it. They're taking the money out of the economy. So relax. They're not really taking money out of the economy. They're just slowing down on the amount of money that they're pumping into the economy, right? Because right now, again, we're going through this inflation that is, this is a really weird period, because it's nothing in economics is ever clear cut to me. It's because people, right? At the bottom line, it's about what's happening to the people. That's economics. But right now we're in such a weird place where we're like experiencing inflation, like we're just experiencing inflation like never before, but also simultaneously it feels like a recession. It feels like a recession. It feels like everyone personally is going through a recession, right? Personally, business-wise, career-wise, it's a recession period, but prices and mortgages and long-term bond yields and stuff are acting like it's an inflation. And I think it has everything to do with like political unrest. Right now, we're a very destabilized country in the United States. We're destabilized. We've managed to destabilize ourselves once again. We're not going to go into that, but that's that. That's what this is. Thank you for watching, and come back soon. Y'all come back now, you hear? Do you still love me or not?
I need some